You're listening to the Fantasy Wildcard Podcast.
Yes, hello everybody and welcome back to the Fantasy Wildcard Dynasty show. We've got an amazing episode for you today with a great guest, but of course joining me as always, it's the one and only Dynasty Mind himself. We are one half of the best two from the Dynasty show. It's Kev, formerly known as the GOAT, now known as the Mind. Kev, slightly under the weather today, but you're gonna pull through, right?
Yeah, feeling pretty tense, pretty under the weather. But like tonight's guest, it's going to be amazing. I couldn't miss it. Such a busy part of the off season with the charity tournaments, the dynasty startups. But we're going to switch up a little bit tonight. We're going to have a little bit of fun, and we're going to use our minds to predict the future.
Yeah, absolutely. We got one of the best minds in the business joining us today as well, where we're going to be talking about this year's version of a standout player from last year. And I couldn't think of anyone better than the co-organizer of the fantastic UK FFC event that we all just went to, and it was unbelievable. It's the best one from the Fantasy Wildcard Rewind Show and the queen of fantasy football herself. It's Hannah Rowland. You can follow her next at Hannah Rowland. Hannah, great to see you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, guys. Super excited to be joining the OG of the Wildcard troupe. You know, it's really exciting to be here to the place where the dynasty started. You know, now there's tentacles all over fantasy football, but this was the original. And so I'm super excited to be here joining you guys tonight. And we've got loads of fun things to chat about.
Yeah, loads of fun things for sure. I really like the topic that we have here. It's, like I said before, looking at players that had a standout year last year for good or for bad and thinking about who might be the 2024 equivalent. And Hannah, we're going to roll right into it with a guy like Jordan Love. So last year, we seen Jordan Love become a young breakout quarterback, finish as a QB1 for the first time in his career. Who do you see that happening to this year?
Okay, so obviously when you sent me over the idea for the show this time, I had to think about it and I was like, it's a bit boring to kind of try and pick people that are borderline or did pretty well last year and, you know, probably could just inch up. So I'm like, right, I'm going to go full on fire. Let's get some kind of random ones out there. Well, not totally random, but, you know, let's get our kind of thinking caps on, because very, very few people, apart from Matt, who's going to say it forever, you know, thought that Puka Nacua was going to be a massive star. So
don't give him any credit ever. Don't give him any credit.
Well, now he's not here anymore. We've sometimes got to be nice to him, right? Because he can't defend himself anymore. So I'll give him one bit of credit and then we can go back to normal. But I had to go, let's go digging in the scrubs, right? We've got to go in the scrubs to find, you know, the stars. So in this scenario, I was like, I'm going to exclude rookies because they don't really fit into the profile. Yeah. So there weren't actually that many options. Bryce Young, no thanks. I'm not totally confident that he's going to make it just yet. Obviously, Anthony Richardson, yes, he wasn't QB1 last season, but that was mainly because of his injuries. So I'm going to go further down the well, and I'm going to say Will Levis. So I do think if Will Levis is going to do well, this is the year that he's going to do it, right? The Titans have really tried to kind of set him up for success this off-season. They brought in Brian Callahan as the new head coach. Obviously, I know him well from his time at the Bengals as the OC. And he comes from a high-powered, pass-first offense. You know, we've seen it with Burrow. Now, of course, Will Levis is not Joe Burrow, and he's not suddenly going to become one of the top 5 QBs in the league from a non-fantasy perspective. But I do think what Callahan did with Jake Browning last season, I think is good kind of blueprint for what to expect for him to do with Will Levis. So obviously in that situation, they did use quite a bit of motion. You know, they used all sorts of things, play action, things that they wouldn't use with Burrow because Burrow doesn't like it. So I think he's going to pull out all of the tricks to help support Will Levis through his second season. Obviously, Then they brought in Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd to upgrade this wide receiver room. And Derrick Henry's been, moved on to the Ravens. So he's not going to be kind of the focal point of the offense as he has been in seasons past. So I totally get that the offensive line's pretty shoddy, but they did try and do their best to draft. They brought in JC Latham, and then they've obviously brought Bill Callahan, the GOAT, to try and improve the line. So I think it's going to be much better this year. And we saw the flashes, right? First game, 3 touchdowns, boom, 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 looking fantastic. I know he's a bit of a deep ball or no ball kind of guy. It's either line of scrimmage or deep, but I think maybe with an off season that'll give him a chance to improve those things. And I think with all the weapons around him, this is his opportunity. If he's going to show that he can be a franchise QB, this is the year. So I think if we're going to bet on anyone, let's bet on Will Levis, because potentially what's around him in this offense and some improvement could propel him to a fantasy QB one season. What do you say?
Hannah's so smart, isn't she? She's the best one from the Rewind team. Will Levis was going to be my pick as well. So I think absolutely spot on everything you've said. He's set up to succeed this season. As a prospect, I wasn't really high on him, a little bit like Jordan Love. But everything's surrounding him now to set him up for success as a passer. He has got some upside as a rusher as well. Derrick Henry's out of town, so that offense is going to look completely different to how it has in previous years. And Will Levis, he is an all-or-nothing sort of guy, like you mentioned. It's either the short stuff or the deep stuff. And I think this season for Will Levis, it's potential to be all or nothing in the sense of I can see him having an excellent season, finishing borderline QB1 if everything falls right. But I can also see a scenario where he just isn't good enough as a prospect and does end up losing his job late season or maybe not being as good as we expected. But I think that's the right pick for me, and well done, 1 out of 1.
Yeah, I was going to be my pick as well, guys. I mean, not just piggyback, even though it's a good idea to piggyback off your guys' ideas. But yeah, Will Levis would have been the guy I went with as well. And Hannah, you spelled it out so beautifully there. Just everything going for him. He's got, hopefully upgrades all around him. If it's going to be a time, it's going to be this year. So I love that pick of Will Levis, who might be this year's Jordan Love. But for one Jordan Love, there's another side of the coin. There's a guy like Bryce Young, a disappointing first-round rookie quarterback. Something that you wouldn't be shocked by if you listened to the Fantasy Wildcard Dynasty show this time last year, because we were telling you guys. So hopefully you did. But Hannah, who's going to be this year's Bryce Young and let everybody down?
Oh, bless her. She's on mute.
She's got muted.
Fail already, isn't it? Let's start again.
We'll never know who it was.
No, that's it. You never know. I could change my mind now. I'm just going to pick someone else.
What do you think, Kev?
So, look, 6 QBs taken in the first round of the draft. History tells us at least one of them is going to be a bust. Now, so far, Penix, we're not too bothered about because he's not really fantasy relevant. We don't think this season. Bo Nix, he's drafted pretty low, although we feel quite confident he's going to start. But I'm going to go up to the top of the NFL draft board, and I'm actually going to pick Drake May. And it's not because of the talent. It's more because of the situation. And I do feel that some of the reason that Bryce Young failed last year was because of the situation that he was in. And Drake May, ultimately, from all of the rookie quarterbacks, he's probably in the worst situation, or at least one of them. We could maybe argue over Denver, couldn't we, potentially? But although the Patriots have worked hard to try and improve, like his pass catchers and this wide receiver room, they drafted the 2 rookies. There's still questions there. They're very young. Everyone could potentially grow together, but I think there's going to be lots of kind of growing pains. And there's still lots of questions about that offensive line. The offensive line really scares me. And I just think, a young and a poor supporting cast could very easily affect May's development. I think if he starts seeing ghosts like Sam Darnold or something like that, things can go downhill quickly, as we saw with Bryce Young last year. And I just think although the Patriots, maybe that might have been their only chance to draft a quarterback high and they really loved him, I just don't think this is the right situation for him to be going into this year, personally. I think they should have built more first and then taken him. But that's my personal opinion. So I think there's a good chance that he could have a disappointing season. And I totally get people are drafting him, in kind of redraft at the moment, quite low because we're not convinced as to when he's going to start. But if we knew that he was going to be starting week 1, I genuinely believe people would be drafting him relatively high, kind of high-end QB2 range, because I think people have confidence in him. But I think potentially he could disappoint us because his supporting cast is just nowhere near good enough. And so much of being a quarterback is mind over matter, in my opinion. And if your mind's not there, it ain't going to matter. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, my mind's not there on Drake May as well. I think we're two out of 2 so far, and I think
look at that.
I'm not a Drake May hater by all in any way at all, but I just feel situation's massive, and he's in a tough situation now. You could say that CJ Stroud was in a tough situation last year and overcame it. I'm just not there with Drake May. I think I had some concerns with level of competition. Sort of the division he played in college. I thought there was more rawness there than maybe a lot of people didn't realise. And the fact that he's going to come in and potentially sit for several weeks behind Jacoby Brissett, that's worrying. Like, it's a franchise, first-year franchise. Let him have a chance. It is my personal view. For someone that's raw and needs to develop in certain aspects, I prefer for him to start all season if possible. Rather than sort of throw him in late and see what he can make out of it. Look, Drake May, when he hits the field, he's going to have that rushing upside. But there's so many question marks in that offense around the weapons that no matter how good you are as a rookie, it's going to be really difficult for him to be anything that he could be in year 1. So I think it's a smart pick to go Drake May as this year's Bryce Young.
Yeah, it's hard to say, especially with Bryce Young he was surrounded by, let's not forget, Hannah, some of Kev's all-time stud wide receivers last year. We had Terrace Marshall there, we had DJ Chark there, we had, who else? I think it was like the whole cast of Kev's past of Adam Thielen, of course. Yeah, so it's like maybe Drake May is working with a little bit worse competition this year. Yeah, you can't argue with it. The only other one that you could throw out, I think, and it would be quite interesting because this guy would also fit into we don't have a category for this year's CJ Stroud, but if we did, Jaden Daniels could fit into both the Bryce Young category and the CJ Stroud category because nobody really knows what the hell is going to happen with that guy. So I think that's a really good, solid pick with Drake May. And I'm with you, Kev. Why is Jacoby Brissett? Do you think there's a single Patriots fan out there who wants to see Jacoby Brissett start week 1?
No.
Can't be. Can't be. Yeah, so just throw him in. Why not? I've seen some articles today. I think Brissett is the starter for now, but I also seen things saying Aidan O'Connell is the starter for now. So don't believe everything. Don't believe everything you read, I suppose. So moving on from Bryce Young, on to our next topic. Who's going to be this year's Kyren Williams? Hannah, a breakout running back who rised up in value hugely and ended up finishing as a running back 1 despite being terrible.
I've got Kyren on a few Dynasty teams and I need him to still be good. So I'm going back to the Titans well here and I'm going to say Tajay Spears.
Nice.
So let's think about this now. The workhorse Derrick Henry, no longer in town. Totally gets a new coaching staff, but the GM who actually drafted him is still in town. So they do still have something invested in him. Totally get they brought in Tony Pollard. But both players do have a very similar skill set. And, the coaching staff have said, right, we're going to use them both interchangeably. Now, I just think that gives Spears an opportunity to show how explosive he is. Now, I totally know maybe I'm kind of overlooking Tony Pollard because historically we loved him. But last year he didn't do quite as well as we were expecting. But Spears, he's got pass catching skills, and Levis is, as we said earlier, he's not afraid to check down. And he targeted his running backs actually at the 6th highest rate in 2023. So whoever is going to be that lead back is going to have good pass catching opportunity. And as I said before, he's going to get an opportunity early in the season to become a lead back because they said they're going to use them both. So if Spears shows his explosiveness, pass catching abilities, and managed to overtake Tony Pollard and get the majority of the work there, I think he could easily finish as a running back one. What say you?
I mean, part of me just wants to say Blake Corum to see the fireworks go off for Mags on this one, but and I think Spears is a great shout. It's a difficult one for me this because nobody saw Kyron Williams appearing, and I think actually using second-year running backs is a smart choice. So guys like Spears, like Chase Brown potentially could step up. I like as well how now you've come on and said I'm not picking any Bengals players. Then you pick two Titans who are heavily influenced by the Bengals on offense with that system and that. A guy I might go for, I'm going to pick is Zach Charbonnet, second year guy in a split backfield. It's a new offensive regime. He's going to get the pass catching work. I think he'll need a little bit of luck, but he seems to be the forgotten man. It seems to be written in stone that it's Kenneth Walker as the one and Charbonnet as the 2 or the 1B. I just keep an eye on that situation, just see what happens there. But he's someone that maybe a little bit is in the back of people's minds that could make a jump into that top half.
Yeah, I mean, just like Tajay's namesake, Brittany. Oops, I did it again, Hannah. I'm agreeing with you 100% here. Like, this is just the obvious one for me as well. Tajay, I'm not really worried about Tony Pollard. To be honest, I think we've seen what we can see out of Tony Pollard. And Tajay Spears, we didn't expect him to see the field at all last year, basically, because of Derrick Henry being, Derrick Henry. But he was so good that he managed to force himself into a pretty decent role. So I don't see Tony Pollard being as good as Derrick Henry to wrestle away that role from him at least. So Tajay is going to kick on, and I think he will just sneak in, Hannah. I think you're right. He'll just sneak in as a running back one. So great pick there on the Kyron Williams topic. And let's roll on to another running back. But this is a much later round rushing touchdown monster en route to an RB1 finish. Very akin to what we've seen from Raheem Mostert last year. Hannah, who's going to be this year's Raheem Mostert?
I've done amazing so far, haven't I? Just as a little side note, I've had someone agree with me each time. So yeah, clearly maybe I should take the mind name instead. Maybe, what do you think? So this kind of felt really obvious to me, and maybe it isn't to anyone else, and this is the one where we have totally different opinions. But surely this has got to be Zeke, right? So he fits the bill, I personally think, pretty much to a T. Older running back. People kind of written him off, and we all know what he is now. He's a short yardage goal line back. But Raheem Mostert, like we said, it's going to be touchdown, and Zeke is going to be the goal line back there, and he's on a high-powered, most likely top 10 offense. There's no way he's not going to get touchdowns. And I could just see Zeke, although everyone's hating on him and says he's washed, and he, yes, okay, maybe he's not the guy that's going to rip off an 80-yard touchdown. But when you get down to the goal line, he's going to plow his way in. So if he's doing that all the time, I can see him being the next Raheem Mostert. I don't know about you guys, but this seemed really, really obvious to me. Rushing touchdown monster. Who else could it be? So as I say, you might not agree with me, but I really genuinely think that Zeke could do pretty well this year. I was totally off him last year, but he's back with the Cowboys. Yeah, Rico Dowdle, I think he was going to have a role, but we know that when they get down in the 10, 5-yard area, he's totally going to be there. And Zeke is my choice.
I think it's a great shout. Like, people are off of Zeke because of his last season being poor in New England. But yeah, he's been a multiple double-digit touchdown scorer in his career. Even towards the end of his time in Dallas, he did that. And he's in an offense that's one of the best in the league. He's going to get plenty of opportunities. Rico Dowdle's always been sort of the breather back, never taken on a large workload. So Could Zeke get 12, 15 touchdowns on this team as a specialist sort of grinder? Absolutely, I think he could. I've picked someone slightly different on this one, who had a ton of touchdowns last season, actually. Gus Edwards. I think he can continue the trend. He had, 13 touchdowns in less than 200 carries, which I'm not saying is sustainable at all, but I think the Chargers, I look at their weapons in the pass game, I don't see a ton of touchdowns from the receiving weapons, and it's going to be a run-heavy team. They had a Joe Alt at tackle. I'm not scared about J.K. Dobbins or potentially rookies like Kimani Vidal, etc. I think Gus Edwards could, again, have 12, 15 touchdowns, and he only needs to get, say, 50, 60 more carries on the season, and he's going to really push himself up into that high-end RB2, potentially running back one range.
Yeah, I love both of those. Kind of similar to what I was thinking as well. Maybe a guy like James Conner, who has dropped down the board a little bit. Expect that the Cardinals will be more pass heavy, so Conner might come in just to be that goal line back a little bit more than what he was used to. And of course, let's not forget Blake Corum. Of course, he's going to take all of Karen Williams' touchdowns. Don't you forget it. So love both of those picks, guys. Hannah, you're on an absolute roll. You're right. So let's roll on from, again, great news at running back to slightly less great news at running back. An aging running back asset about to hit a cliff and just fall off in fantasy. Who's going to be this year's Austin Eckler?
So do you know what? I kind of was a little bit, I wasn't sure about this question, because I'm like, do we know that Eckler has truly fallen off the cliff? Because he did have an ankle injury last season, and I do question whether he does still have something in it. I'm not saying he's going to be like any kind of lead back, but I do question whether he might be a bit better this season. But anyway, we'll go with it. I totally wanted to say Derrick Henry here, just because he's gone to the Ravens, and obviously I totally hate the Ravens, but how can you bet against Derrick Henry? You just can't, can you?
Yeah.
So I've gone with Alvin Kamara. I do think that the cliff can be notoriously difficult to predict. So for me, this was one of the most tough questions to kind of pick out. But Kamara did have some drop-offs in his rushing stats last year. His yards after contact had come down a bit. His evaded tackles per game and his yards per carry had all kind of dropped from previous years. The reason that he was kind of propped up in fantasy was his receiving work. So actually, he only just finished as a running back 1 last season in PPR, finishing as a running back 12. But actually, in a standard league, he only finished as a running back 24. I genuinely think that, unfortunately, Kamara is kind of on the downward trend. And I think, yes, he may get a few receptions that might kind of prop him into running back 2 kind of area in PPR leagues, but I really think in other leagues he's going to drop like a stone. And I think his days as a running back 1 are kind of long gone, and I think his dominance and his time kind of in fantasy being one of those top guys is coming to an end. And I'm avoiding him this year, to be honest. I know a lot of people are in on him, but for me, he's a hard avoid. I think the cliff is coming, and I think Kamara is going to be like around 15 or later pick next year.
I'm going to be that guy that picks Derrick Henry. Anybody that listens to the Rose Show, brave man. I think if you've not heard the Rose Show, check it out. Some pretty funny jokes on there. But this is a guy that's, he's, I said on there, he's more washed than Jenna Jameson's vagina, which, that's a bit tongue-in-cheek. We've got no signs to say he's truly washed, but it could be. I think he's moving to a new team. It's a new situation, and everyone just expects better numbers, or at least similar numbers to what he's done for Tennessee. I think if I'm going to bet on somebody to hit a cliff, it's a guy that's in his 30s already. He's got a lot of weight to carry. I'm not saying he's fat or anything. He's a big, muscly dude, but that's going to take its toll on the limbs, the lower limbs in time. So Derrick Henry, he'll probably prove me wrong because he has done the past few years, but he was the one that sprang to mind when it came to sort of that cliff based on age and expectation.
Well, I disagree with both of you. I think Kamara's about to have a really, really strong season. I think he's a guy that I'm sort of targeting a lot in charity leagues and redraft leagues because I think he is dropping quite a lot down the line. I think the receiving work he's going to get is going to be huge. Hannah, you're right. I think if it's not in a PPR league, I'm staying away from him. But I think he's going to get an absolute ton of targets. I think Kamara's got one more year in the tank, and Derrick Henry, I'm super bullish on him as well. This might be because I have both in the Scott Fish Bowl, guys. I don't know, but I'm disagreeing with you on those. I'm gonna take. I don't know if this fully counts as up there as an Austin Eckler, but I do wonder about Joe Mixon going over to Houston. I wonder if we've seen the best of Joe Mixon at the Bengals compared to what he might look like over in Houston. If not, I'd go really spicy and say Saquon Barkley, but I don't think I'm ready to. I don't think so. What do you think?
I was hoping someone said Christian McCaffrey, but we're not there, are we?
No, that guy's a machine, an absolute machine. I'm not saying anything about him. Hannah, do you have something to say there? You look like you were in thought.
No, I actually, obviously Mixon is no longer a Bengal, so I don't need to kind of justify him anymore. But I do actually think that he's going to have quite a good season. He's not as good as he used to be, but I think his kind of strengths were starting to get a little bit different to what the Bengals wanted to do. I think the shotgun game probably wasn't quite as kind of good for his skill set, and I do think he's still going to be the lead running back there in Texas, and I think he's probably going to have quite a strong season. Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because ultimately one of these is going to hit the cliff, but how do you know who it's going to be and when it's going to be? We've been saying it about Derrick Henry for 3 years, and still he plows on and on and on. And, he's carried the ball like 1,000,000 times and barely ever seems to get injured. Like this guy's some sort of crazy machine. But at some point it's going to come, and maybe this year, you're right, Kev, it is this year, but I couldn't do it. I'm just not ready to bet on him yet. He's too much of a machine, even though I want him to because he's a Raven.
I love that description. That is a nickname someone should have in the NFL, right? I know Henry's already got the king, but the crazy machine is a brilliant name for somebody. That needs to be clipped on to somebody for sure. And speaking of a crazy machine, last year, good Lord, Puka Nacua was a crazy machine. So Hannah, this is the one I've been waiting for, right? Because this is the hardest one of all. These have all been really difficult, but who is, the day 3 breakout wide receiver about to go wild?
So this is where I went a bit, you might not say it's spicy, to be honest, but I was like, I'm going to have to dig deep here. So I went Javon Baker for the Patriots. Nice. So even though I've said actually they're going to be terrible because Drake May is going to be rubbish, we're going to forget that for this scenario. And I'm going Javon Baker. Look, the Patriots, particularly the wide receiver room, is in a complete state of flux. Obviously, they've had the influx of young wide receivers, Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. Everyone expects Polk to be the guy. Certainly he was drafted first and probably maybe is a bit more kind of polished than Baker. But their skill set is slightly different. And I do think that Baker, would fit more into that kind of typical ex-wide receiver role than a lot of the other wide receivers in that room. I think the other guy that's kind of potentially going to be his competition is Kendrick Bourne. But obviously he's coming off quite a major injury and he's probably not going to be at his best, particularly at the beginning of the season. So I think this potentially gives Baker an opportunity to see the field early on. And obviously, I know a lot of people think he was raw, but, if he can go out there and he can put on some good film for the coaching staff, potentially he could stay out there the whole season. And if the Patriots are a bit better than we're all expecting, particularly if, Jacoby Brissett, let's say, for the start of the season, I think he could really get going and potentially, who knows, he could be the next Puka. I mean, no one's going to be the next Puka, but I could totally see Javon Baker outperforming his ADP, which is basically what we're saying, because I can't imagine anyone's going to go crazy like Puka, Yeah,
it's such a difficult question. It's why we haven't put who's Wilbur this year, Sam Laporta, on the show, because it very likely it's not going to happen. But I think you made some great points on John Baker. I think what you have to, when you're trying to predict this, it's got to be someone that has a pathway to relevance. wide receiver room wise, and someone that has shown potential in his profile. So I think between him and Jalen Polk, I personally think Baker's more talented. Like, I know the draft capital suggests otherwise, but in the rookie model that I use, they're very, very similar scores, and that's including draft capital. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's the Patriots wide receiver one this season. Like you mentioned, Kendrick Bourne's someone I really like, but he's come back from major injury. The guy I've gone for is Ryan Flournoy of the Cowboys. Again, someone that's on a really powerful offense. Someone that, there's Brandon Cooks as wide receiver 2. He's got to beat Jalen Talbot as a wide receiver 3. I think there is a pathway there where he can be the number 3. And look, if he flashes, Brandon Cooks is going to be 31, going on 32. Maybe not.
Yeah, it's tricky. You have to get, like, we forget as well, Puka was obviously outstanding, but he wouldn't have been where he was if it wasn't for the Cooper Kupp injury and Kupp not being on the field a lot of the year and certainly not being healthy most of the year. So it's hard to predict because you have to get lucky. A guy that really stands out for me, though, Roman Wilson at the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just could see a ton of targets for because Puka got there because he was a PPR monster, just hoovered up all those targets. Deontay Johnson, as we know, has moved on. He had a ton of targets at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Roman Wilson could come in and hoover up as many of those targets as possible. We haven't seen George Pickens perform as a true wide receiver 1 yet. So is there a chance that Roman Wilson could come in and take that job? About as much chance as it was of Puka Nacua becoming a wide receiver 1 last year, but that's kind of what we're asking. So I could see possibly Roman Wilson. Of course, Jermaine Burton, Hannah, right? He's going to do it.
He's day 2 though, so I couldn't say him. Yeah, but he's fantastic. He's going to be a wide receiver 1 by week 2.
Nice. I think
No,
so,
missing,
yeah.
but he has massive potential, right? Anyway, something for another day, maybe. The only thing I would say about Roman Wilson, which could be totally nothing because this was in like the off season and OTAs or whatever, but one of the beat reporters, did you read this, where they were discussing about who could be the wide receiver 2 on the team, and they didn't even mention Roman Wilson. They basically forgot that he was even there. So for me, that's kind of not necessarily a promising sign that he's doing great at OTAs and kind of standing out as the guy that could be the wide receiver 2. So I don't know. And I think there has been kind of rumblings that he's got some work to do, but who knows? He could be a fast learner. And by the end of training camp, boom, right there, overtaking George Pickens, who I'm not a fan of anyway.
Maybe he's doing so well he was locked in as wide receiver 1 and didn't even considering for wide receiver 2, Hannah, right?
That must be it. So you're 100% going to be right, Mags, now. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Absolutely. From one wide receiver 1 in Roman Wilson to another in last year. Hey, DJ Moore, he did it. He finally did it, right? He finished as that high-end wide receiver 1, but he did it with a brand new quarterback. And he had the best year of his entire career. DJ Moore, who's going to be the feel-good story? Because I felt great for DJ Moore last year. Who are we going to feel great for at wide receiver this year, Hannah?
I already know that one person is going to disagree with me on this show. So I think we all know already who this person is going to be.
Oh, no, I know what you're going to say here.
You do. And I genuinely, Max, don't see how you can't see that this might be a possibility. It's got to be Drake London, right? Drake London. He's finally been unleashed from an Arthur Smith offense. Like, that's the only thing he's known ever since he's entered the NFL. Obviously, we know that Smith was questioned all last season because he just didn't use his studs in the correct way. And it was one of the most run-heavy offenses in the league. New offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson, coming over from LA, a team that's absolutely renowned for putting its players in the best position to succeed. So I really do think they're going to be putting Drake London in good positions. Obviously, Kirk Cousins now at the helm, passing rate's going to go through the roof compared to last season. And I personally think that London is going to be the main benefactor. Even under Arthur Smith last season, he still managed to finish as a wide receiver 1 in 2 of his games. So let's, increased opportunity. I really just think that he could definitely be more kind of predictable and be a finish as a wide receiver 1 in 2024. That's my thoughts. I felt that he was the obvious choice. Obviously, Mags, I don't know where you're going to dig out and find someone from, because it's not going to be Drake London, is it?
It's interesting. I think what's interesting is the last 3 shows, Drake London's had some positive words said about him after the Rose show where he got annihilated. So I think it's really good. There's a bit of a balance for the audience, so that it's not just all one size fits all. And I do think he's an obvious candidate. He's someone that's failed to be a wide receiver 1 so far. Someone that's got a really popular QB change, whichever QB it is. Ooh. So I think it's a wise choice. Now, I'm going to probably disappoint both of you here because this guy got mentioned about 3 minutes ago. I'm picking George Pickens, someone that I love. Deontay Johnson. I think he's so talented, and I think that's going to create so much opportunity for George Pickens. Yes, there is this stink of Arthur Smith, but I see Pickens so clear at wide receiver 1 as a number 1 target on that team. Pat Fryermuth is someone that sort of middling tight end. You've got a rookie Roman Wilson as wide receiver 3 or 4 behind Quez Watkins and Van Jefferson or something daft like that. I think the market might be a little bit too tight on Pickens as to the Arthur Smith side of things. So I can see that 3rd-year jump a little bit like a DK Metcalf type season where it might be 70 catches, 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns as opposed to one of these 100 catch type seasons. I think he'll need a bit of luck with touchdowns, but that's someone I'm going to pick out because I didn't want to say Drake London.
I think I've said enough about Drake London for a lifetime. I'll maybe pass up. There's hours of footage, guys, if you want to go out and check it out. People listen
head to YouTube. It's got plenty.
Yeah, head to YouTube. You'll find it all. I've done a whole 15-minute video. We don't have 15 minutes here, sadly. But I will say this. I don't think Drake London is a terrible player. I just think his value is the issue with me, where he's going in Dynasty, ranked as wide receiver 10. That's my issue. Could he come in and finish in the wide receiver 12 position? I mean, he better. If he doesn't, that's what's going to happen to his value is going to start plummeting. So that's really my main issue with Drake London. I think people think I think he's a terrible player. I don't quite think he's terrible. I just don't like his positioning. So I'll take that.
Not very good.
He's just not very good. Right? Yeah. Well, let's go with that. I'm going to go. My obvious one. It's kind of cheating, though, guys. I'm not going to lie. Can you give me Garrett Wilson? Can I get Garrett Wilson?
Oh no, 100% not. That's way too obvious.
He never threw him the ball, right? He's like it's a new quarterback at cards, right?
No, I'm sorry, Mags. That's a very poor choice. Got to dig deeper than that. That's my opinion anyway.
Who else have I got? Who could I give you as a complete wild card out of the blue one? I don't know. Garrett Wilson was the one thinking. Hey, what about Terry? No, Jahan Dotson. How about that? There's a flyer for you. There you go. Take that one.
I did consider Terry McLaurin though, because I don't think he's ever finished as wide receiver 1. But then I was like, do I really believe Jaden Daniels going to make him wide receiver 1? Then I took him off. But I certainly did think he was an option for me.
Yeah. From an option for you.
Hey, Max, just a quick one on Drake London. We have to share this story, I think. Me and you were in a Devi starter partway, and we managed to get the person that drafted Drake London in round 3 to actually trade Drake London in the startup through sharing the Rose show and bullying him. So I thought that was a story we needed to share.
I love that. Yeah, that was so funny. Drake London is being effective in some kind of way by us now, which is quite nice. Hopefully, I mean, I've got a lot of stock in him not doing very well. So hopefully, if he does do well, you might not see me for a while, guys. I might have to seal away, and you might see Mod Seed Hags appear with a different look at some stage. So let's move on to a guy here. This is a guy who knows if I'm going to be right about Drake London or not, but this is a guy I was definitely right about. A rookie bust wide receiver. I was shouting from the hilltops, do not draft Quentin Johnson last year. He was terrible, Hannah. Who's going to be that guy this year?
So to me, this was another obvious choice, and it was Xavier Legette. I think ultimately there are two ways that Legette could fail in 2024. So either he could be a bust or Bryce Young could be a bust. Either way, I think he's going to be a bust. He was a late breakout in college. He only really has one true year of college production. He's still raw and developing his route running. I'm still perplexed as to why the Panthers, moved up from the first pick in the second round to the last pick in the first round to go and get him, when really it was only the Bills. And I can't imagine that the Bills wanted to get. Well, they clearly didn't because they traded down. So
you get the 5th year option, right? Is that what it is? Is that maybe
why?
You get the 5th
year
year
option for a wide receiver? I don't know. I'm just not sure. Still, none of it makes sense to me. But anyway, they did it. Ultimately, we know that Deontay Johnson is going to be the wide receiver one on the team. So, he is also going to need Bryce Young to be okay to support, him. So ultimately, if Legette's going to do anything, Bryce Young has to be able to support at least 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers. And at the minute, he's not even proven that he can support 1 for a whole season. So if he's going to support anyone, it's going to be Deontay Johnson. So I just think ultimately Legette's going to bust this season, and I don't really want anything to do with him.
Legette's a really good pick there. It's a legit pick in that sense. I think the part of rookie drafts where he was going, I think there's a lot of landmines. And my pick's someone that was in rookie drafts around that space, which this might get an endorsement from Mags, it might not. But I've gone for Keon Coleman, someone that I'm a Curtis Samuel fan. Mags, I think he likes Dalton Kincaid. I'm not too sure. But yeah, Keon Coleman's someone that's super raw. He's got a wide range of outcomes. I think he's got to be a big slot. Will he get played there? I'm not sure. So on that reason, I think he's got a really high bust potential.
Yeah, Keon Coleman was my guy as well. It just makes too much sense. Him coming in, they've already said they're going to play him on the outside. Keon Coleman in college had an under 30% contested catch ratio. Absolutely appalling compared to like Roma Dunze that was in this high 70%. So that's what you want for a big outside receiver. Keon Coleman, you're right, should play in that big slot role, but doesn't look like that's where they're going to play him for now. If he does get moved in there, there's more of a chance. Man, if you want me to go really spicy on who might bust this year, any of you worried a little bit about Malik Neighbors? Just that Giants team's a bit of a hot mess, right? So I'm slightly worried about Malik Neighbors year 1 as well. But that's just year 1. Whereas with Johnson, I was worried full time, and I thought he was rubbish. But year 1, kind of worried about Neighbors.
Spicy.
I guess for me, it's what do you define as a bust? Is it not performing to your ADP? Then certainly I could see that. But as someone who kind of does nothing, like a full-on proper QJ who literally has like 5 catches and is just barely seen on the field, then I think that's not going to be Malik Neighbors. But yeah, I guess it's just how you define it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone's going to do absolutely nothing, I think if the closest one I could see, and it was kind of later around too, Adonai Mitchell's the guy I think that might just do absolutely nothing. Like he's just got that weird sort of attitude, like has so many odd plays in college where he looked amazing 1 minute and looked terrible the next, kind of like Quentin Johnson. So he might be the guy that literally does nothing and for some reason just never sees the field. He might be the closest to that in that sense. But we've said Quentin Johnson enough on this show. I think let's move along from QJ and on to a guy, one of the most maligned guys in fantasy football. I think I've spoken this little story about this guy before, where his rookie year he finished as a top 5 player in his position, and then for the next 3-4 years he was nowhere near, and everyone hated on him. And in the last couple of seasons, he's been top 5, and everyone's like, you know what? I don't even care anymore, which is very harsh on poor old Evan Ingram. So, Hannah, who's going to be the surprise top 5 finish that no one seems to care about this year? Who's going to be this year's Evan Ingram?
So I've gone to the wide receiver position for this one. And for this scenario to work, you have to have 2 things. One is forget everything that I've said for most of the show. And also, think outside the box because it has to be a surprise. So I've gone for Deontay Johnson. So I totally get that the Panthers need to take this massive leap for it to come to fruition, particularly with Bryce Young. But, with the surprise element, I was like, yes, we'll all be surprised if the Panthers are any good at all. So certainly, though, if Bryce Young does take that leap, and obviously we're all maligning him and saying that he probably isn't, but if he does, this really isn't outside the realm of possibility. Johnson is the wide receiver one there. We know that's going to be the case. There really is no competition. And he is a talented wide receiver. So in 2021, when he was like he's always been kind of the outright wide receiver one in Pittsburgh. But, as a wide receiver one on a different team, in 2021, he finished as the wide receiver 7. So he was really close to that kind of top 5 finish. Dave Canales did a great job last season, and he helped Baker Mayfield support his first ever fantasy wide receiver one in Mike Evans, right? So, who also, interestingly, finished as the wide receiver 7. But if he can do that with Bryce Young, then ultimately Johnson's going to be the main benefactor, and I think could potentially sneak into the top 5. So, Deontay Johnson for me.
I love Deontay Johnson, as I've already said on this show. If he's top 5, I'm down bad on Bryce Young. Like I've definitely missed the boat on him. So yeah, if Deontay Johnson can be that wide receiver, you need to be in on Bryce Young. I kept it at tight end on this one. I thought, who could make a jump? And it's a guy I'm growing towards as the offseason develops, and it's Jake Ferguson. Someone that he had 5 touchdowns last season, was top 10 tight end. I was looking at Dalton Schultz and some of his numbers, and he actually finished the top 3 tight end with, I think it was 8 or 9 touchdowns. Now, if Ferguson had the same numbers last year, but instead of his 5, let's give him 9, which, yeah, it's nearly double, but let's just say 9 for the purpose of my argument today. It would have been top 5. So, yeah, someone that I think is the clear-cut number 2 in the offense. It's an explosive offense. I love talking about how good the Cowboys are as well. So, yeah, Jay Ferguson.
I'm going to go well out of left field here. It's probably not going to happen. It's not what you're thinking. It's not Daniel Bellinger. I know, Kev, you're thinking I'm going to say Daniel Bellinger. I'm not. Well, I did think about it. Give me Greg Dulcich of the Denver Broncos, guys. That would be a massive surprise. But I'm looking around at that room. Not a huge amount of competition there. We're expecting a sort of more dynamic passing game, hopefully. We know the way that offense is going to run. Someone's going to have to be the quote-unquote Michael Thomas, right? It could be the tight end. It could be a guy like Greg Dulcich, who, when he's been healthy and on the field, has really, really impressed me, certainly. So I'm going way out of left field here, and that would be a huge surprise to see Greg Dulcich up there. Hopefully he can, because I do like him. I wish he could stay healthy, but that's maybe a step too far, I think. I don't think anyone would really agree with that, but I thought I'd get a bit spicy. But Kev, you mentioned Jake Ferguson there, and that's quite funny because our final topic of the day is who's going to be a tight end outside the top 20 to finish as a tight end 1. Who's going to be this year's Jake Ferguson?
So I looked at Fantasy Pros ADP for this. I wasn't entirely sure, where we're going to get our top 20. So that's where I got mine from anyway. So the guy that I went for was Noah Fant. So there literally has been like hopes and prayers for a breakout for Fant, like literally forever, ever since his time in Denver. And it just has not happened for him just yet. But obviously they've got the new offensive coordinator in Ryan Grubb, and he's got finally a clear path to playing time. I think his 6th year in the league might finally be his breakout year. I think we've kind of got a bit jaded and, expects now Titans to break out when they're in their rookie or second year. And, that's not always the case. Although we've seen these breakouts earlier and earlier, historically it has taken time for Titans to break out. And I think we keep kind of forgetting that. And we're just like, oh, the new shiny thing, the new rookie was going to be the next Sam Laporta. Let's all draft Brock Bowers and be happy forever. But there's some guys here that still could have fancy value and break out for us. We know how important athleticism is for the position, and Fant has that in spades. Ryan Grubb utilised tight ends loads in his offense at Washington. And I just think if Fant can get a good role in the receiving game, yes, I know he's got a very good wide receiver room out there, so he has to try and earn those targets. But I do think if he can get a good role in the receiving game, get quite a few touchdowns, I think he's got a chance to be a Titan 1 in 2024.
Chef's kiss to finish the selections there, and just unbelievable selection of Noah Fant, a guy that's 26 and he's been a tight end 1 twice already in his career. Forgotten man. Everything he said was perfect. Like, this is a guy I believe he got an off-season extension with the Seahawks, potentially a free agent upcoming, but someone that, look, if there's one thing I know, it's a tight end. Evan Ingram, David Njoku, Noah Fant's the next one on that archetype. So buy him now.
I think you're both living in a Noah fantasy world, because this is just not a chance Noah Fant's coming anywhere near that, guys, right? He's got too much competition around him, and he absolutely sucks, right? I just thought I should actually disagree with some of your picks for once. I actually do quite like it. Noah Fant, good solid prospect. Could finish his tight end 1. He's a guy. Any of these. This is the thing about tight ends, right? Any of the guys outside the top 20 could finish as tight end 1, because from tight end 8 down to tight end 32, they've all got a chance. So this is why I didn't say it last time, but God damn it, it's going to be Daniel Bellinger, Kev.
No,
Finally.
Could be.
He's going to do it. It could be. It's a complete crapshoot with tight ends, unless you have one of those elite ones. Anyone could finish as a tight end 1. I imagine, I've not done it in a while, but I imagine if you scroll back through the years, look at who finished as tight end 12 over the last couple of years, and you will just laugh. I'm sure seeing some of the names on there, just unbelievable. Like I think Jimmy Graham did it, not being able to run for a couple of years, and he still managed to finish like top 12, just catching touchdowns alone. So yeah, it could be absolutely anyone there at the tight end position. So yeah, it could definitely be Noah Fant, but it's definitely going to be Daniel Bellinger. Definitely going to be Daniel Bellinger. Right. So that brings us to the end of the show. I think we've ended the show talking about Bellinger one too many times. Perhaps I should lay off a little bit, but just wanted to say, Hannah, thank you so much for coming on and being an absolutely unbelievable guest, like we knew you would be. Can you just tell everyone where can they find all your awesome work online, please?
Yeah, of course. I mean, thank you so much for having me again. Like I said, it's great to be on the actual OG show, the best show of the Wildcard set. Obviously, I can say that as a member of the Wildcard team. So obviously, you can find me along with Paul and Lewis on Mondays on the Wildcard Rewind Show. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it this week, so Paul's picked a load of random awful players for me that I think could finish as the top of their positions. So, go and listen to him being mean to me, because I was mean to him the week before when he wasn't there. So that should be a fun one. As I say, they've chatted through who they think is going to finish top of their position. And I think there's quite a few fun kind of thought processes going through there. And then, like you said at the beginning, Mags, you can find me on X at Hannah Rowland. Always happy to chat through things, speak to people about fantasy, some of our favourite pastime, isn't it? So, again, thank you both for having me. I loved it. People might be a bit bored because we just basically pretty much all agreed, didn't we? But we had some fun kind of guys in there. And like you say, great minds think alike, right? So we can't argue all the time. And we did mention Drake London. So, that was a little bit of a contentious spot, but yeah, I had a great time chatting with you guys. So much fun. I reckon if we look back this time next year at who we've picked, we'll be like, none of them did anything. We were wrong about everything, but who knows? It's very difficult to predict the future, isn't it?
Very, very difficult. And Kev, at the start of the show, you're feeling a bit under the weather. How are you feeling now? You perked up a bit after this amazing show.
Yeah, I came off pup. I've had an amazing evening with you both. Hannah's really helped with my confidence as well, because we picked a lot of similar players there, a lot of great thought process. It's been a great show. Like, look, we agreed on a lot of it, which I think is great in a way, because it shows that we're correct and we are pretty much right. But then the contentious ones were great to discuss as well. So just really appreciate Hannah coming on. Royalty, the queen of Fantasy Wildcard. Love everything you do with our brand and also with the UK FFC. So please make sure you're following Hannah. I've had a lovely evening, and now I'm off back on pup.
Back on pup. And thank everybody for listening. Remember, you can find the whole Fantasy Wildcard crew at Fantasy Wildcard over on X. Make sure you're following the Dynasty Show, the Rewind Show, and don't forget those Devi guys as well. Absolutely killing it too. So from myself, from Kev, from Hannah, and the whole Wildcard crew, thank you. We'll see you next time. Bye.
When you have the wild card, you have the power to change the game.